Don't tell that to anybody. I've got good friends in the other agency. That's on the record, right? I hope they're not watching. No, they know that. I mean, this is an open debate. It's an open secret. Any others? Okay, I see eyelids heavy.
My name is Miranda. I'm with a biological firm in Nanaimo called MC Wright & Associates. My question to you is more, after you've created and implemented a marine spatial plan, what are the measures that you would recommend to monitor that plan to make sure people are adhering to it, and also how do you even begin to enumerate its effectiveness?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good question. It's not just biological indicators or biophysical indicators you would want. You would want to have different measures that you would use as indicators, and that those indicators should be the basis of a monitoring program if you're considering performance monitoring versus state of the system monitoring, state of the environment monitoring, which that's most monitoring is at that level. But there should be more focus on trying to identify indicators that are actually related to management measures so that you can measure over time. You can monitor and measure and evaluate the effectiveness of those individual or collective management decisions. So there's lots written on that. There's a ton of stuff on that. There's a couple of good recommended readings on our website. IOC, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, compiled a set of coastal and ocean indicators. Those indicators are in 3 classes: biophysical, socioeconomic, and governance. That's fairly standard split of the indicators. Why do you want to measure governance indicators? And again, there are different ways of doing that. But those are indicators you can measure in the short run. Nobody wants to say it's going to take me 10 years to produce results or evaluate the effectiveness of this plan, because politicians are going to come and go in that period of time, and they can care less about an indicator that's going to take 10 or 20 years to measure. But that's reality. The system is going to respond slowly to any management measure. It's going to be responding to other factors as well. But my only point is that there are lots of things. How is your MPA doing? You ever hear of that document? That was one that I did under my NOAA regime. But it has got another list that is pretty consistent with the IOC list. The World Bank has done a lot of stuff on indicators because they like to look at measure the effectiveness of their investments. So there are many sources. Happy to talk to you more about that. And there are literally hundreds of indicators, which you don't want to do. I mean, you don't want to have 100 indicators in a plan. You want to have 10, 15 indicators, maybe a distribution across those 3 classes of indicators, so that you can actually show some results. You got to actually pick some that are going to show some results. I wouldn't pick things that you just can't possibly achieve in a couple of years, or only those that you can't achieve. You want to have some short-term results that can be measured, and again, more scientific indicators and results that would take a longer time to measure.
Thank you, Bud. I'm Gary Coons. I'm the MLA for the North Coast. I live in Prince Rupert. And basically the riding that I'm honored to represent, every square meter, it falls within PNCIMA. And you talked about the coordination of federal and provincial jurisdictions must be done early in the stage of any planning. And basically, our province has no marine protected policy and no agreement on MPAs with the federal government. The provincial government has hesitated to come to the table. I'm just wondering how we can convince and work with states or provinces to get involved in the process early.
I have no idea, because again, I'm being facetious, but I just don't know what the specifics are of kinds of agreements you have tried to develop or not tried, or what the issues are. So that's a tough one for me to answer, but I think you probably should try to do that. I think it's a good idea. Go home and work on that, please. Okay, I think we've exhausted questions and the audience. No, I'm happy to stand here as long as people have questions. I don't know about everybody else willing to sit here, but...
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Jonathan. I'm from UBC. My question is, well, first of all, you presented a lot of good cases, from various countries, and maybe my question relates to trying to synthesize the lessons learned across different experiences, and specifically in terms of time frame. So looking at all those case studies, how long does it take to create a plan? That's one question. Mm-hmm. The other question is in terms of lessons learned. Maybe you can give some good lessons learned in terms of implementation. What are the excellent experience of well-implemented plans or plans that have been implemented and successful? And then in terms of continuity, because problems changes over time, issues changes over time, and based on those experiences, how they dealt with this kind of changes.
Okay, those are good questions. How long does it take? 1 year, Massachusetts. 10 years, ESIM. That's the range. Okay. Most of the plans that we have looked at have taken less than 10 years, closer to 1 year. I'd say the average is more like 2-3 years. It depends. Again, it depends on if you have in the legislation, as Massachusetts did, that you will produce a plan in 18 months, you're going to do it in 18 months. If you have an open-ended mandate, then it's more difficult to pin down, and it's sort of a matter of choice and lots of other issues that might depend or might determine the time frame. But certainly it's closer to 3-4 years at the most than it is. The ESIM is an outlier. Trying to remember what else you asked. You asked some of the just. Oh, implementation. Okay, that's a good one as well. I'll address implementation. Not all of these plans that I mentioned have been implemented. That was one of our criteria, that we would like to find plans that have actually been carried out so that we could look at the results of the plans. But again, you have to recognize that we did this all in 18 months, so we took a pretty superficial look at a lot of the plans. There are a number of these plans, a small number, maybe 3 or 4, that are in their second iteration. So they've actually been implemented. They have done some preliminary monitoring. They have determined that some of the management measures are not working very well, and they are examples of adaptive management. I think the best example of adaptation is one of the oldest, and that's the Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef I often describe as a bad model for marine spatial planning, only because it's a single goal, single objective planning process. So if we're talking about multi-objective planning, the Great Barrier Reef or the Florida Keys Marine Sanctuary that I worked on are